Hello everybody and welcome to this week's Easy 11 Plus live lesson with, as you can see, a very excited Grigri who can't wait to get going. Grigri's excited and I'm quite tired because we've been doing a lot of teaching. If you want to take part in any of my online lessons, you can go to the RSL Educational website and the tuition page there. Why don't you sign up for a class and find out what it's all about and whether you like it and find it useful. Thank you very much, Belwoo, saying that Grigri is so cute. Grigri, did you hear that? Grigri appreciates that. He says you're cute too. I don't know what he's basing that on, but that's his opinion. There were some lively comments going on. There's a story. Someone's writing a story about Dimitri and Grigri. Amandam Party Paruban has written, Dimitri snatched the ghoul and slid down the stairs. Grigri followed. Dimitri trapped Grigri in a stocking. Grigri wriggled free like that. Shout out to people who asked for percent. I'm seeing a percent on my screen. Probably put an emoji or something there, but it isn't showing for me. Welcome to everybody. Welcome to Ratchet Crafts, who said it's my first live lesson. Well, I'm very, very honoured to have you. Yeah, fabulous. Okay, so this week we're looking at a bit of descriptive writing. It's actually a task from one of my recent lessons. You can join my lessons via the RSL Educational website. Did I say that already? And this task is about writing, is about describing a person in a picture. I'm going to keep this lesson quite short because I'm quite tired, but that means we can be really focused and direct. Okay, so the question says, write a very short, roughly 8 to 12 lines, description of the person in this scene. The person in this scene. So if most of your piece is about the taxis or the bicycles or the people in the background, you won't be describing the person. It's great if you bring in some of these details, but make sure that it's all to do with the person and what's happening with them. Describe them as though they are a real person, not a picture of the person. And the reason I put this there is because this is a really, really common mistake that people make when writing based on a picture. They imagine that it's a picture hanging on the wall of a gallery, let's say, or on your computer screen, like this. And then they say things like, in the picture I can see such and such. Or they don't say that, but they still write about it like it's a picture. What does it mean to write about something like a picture? It means that everything is still. It also means you can't hear anything or smell anything or feel anything because everything is just still there in the picture. So it's going to be a very still account of stuff that you can see. Instead, when you have a picture task in an exam, do not treat it as a picture. Imagine that you are there. So for example, you're standing on the opposite pavement and this is really happening. So there are sounds and there are movements. This is not a person in the middle of the scene that you can see. This is somebody moving around that corner and disappearing off over there. And that's what you need to describe this scene. When you're given a picture to write about in an exam, you should treat it like a scene that you're describing. Get into the picture. Use details from the picture. For example, there are taxis. This taxi is indicating right. It's going to turn around the corner after the scooter rider. There's a lamppost that he's going past, and you can see that there's a curb that he's leaning against, and there's the shadow of his scooter on the curb. There are people over there. Maybe you hear the sounds of their voices. Maybe there were the smells coming from this kiosk with tobacco, internet, and walls signs on it. So bring in the sounds and smells and noises and make it real. Don't list. So don't make every sentence be about a different thing, as though you could write each sentence as a new bullet point. Why is that not? Oh, it's because it's off the edge of your screen. That's why I was just doing little bullet points there. So don't do it as though it's a list of bullet points. Make your ideas connect as far as possible. A bit like you're there and you see one thing and then you hear the sound coming from something else and that draws your attention to that thing, and because you're looking at that thing, therefore you notice that thing. Trying to make things join together. Right, I'm just going to have a go at writing an answer. I haven't prepared anything. I don't have a prepared answer. I'm going to come up with it here until you'll see my thought process for better or for worse. So, I'm in the exam here. What am I noticing? Where do I want to start? I think I'm going to start when I first noticed this character. And he's come from there, and he's come from, maybe he squeezed through between the taxis because he's a very dangerous scooter rider, and he catches my attention because of the sound and maybe the rush of air as you come around the corner, then I can work in those two senses immediately. There's a violent honking. That's the horn of the taxi being annoyed as he pushes out. So immediately I'm focused on this being a character who's actually doing something. So my handwriting is execrable. It's the way it is, but hopefully it's just about legible. But that isn't a T, is it? As he pushes out from between two taxis, and now I could say and rushes for the corner, which of course is what he's going to do. He must be going quite fast because look how he's leaning as he comes to the corner. So you can take details like that from the image. So he rushes for the corner. But also this is an electric scooter, right? So to make him rush, I reckon he's going to twist the grip on the handlebar. So I'm going to add that detail to show that I'm really responding closely, and also that makes us really focus on the figure as I describe this. And with a twist, but what kind of twist? How does he twist his wrist? Is this a careful scooterist who adds power like that? No, I think he's really overconfident and quite aggressive in the way he does it. I reckon he... and with a jerk off his wrist. So the detail that I choose makes a huge difference. And I haven't done it by saying a quick twist of his wrist. I've chosen one word that tells us that. And with a jerk of his wrist... Rushes, how about surges? That shows power as well as speed. With it surges towards... surges towards the corner. So I started with an action. And this immediately means that I'm not describing a picture, but I'm in the scene. But I'm also really focused on the character and what they're doing. However, I've also brought in the taxis there and the fact that he's rounding a corner. So I'm engaging with all sorts of aspects of this in my first sentence. I've also got a sound, the violent honking, and I've got a detail in what he's doing with his hand on the, I don't know what you call it, on the throttle, I suppose, of the scooter. So there's a lot that you can do in quite a short amount of space, even just in one opening sentence. And this is something you need to work on in your writing in general, but particularly when you've got a short task like this. You need to make every word count and do as much as you can with the minimum of words. There's a violent honking as he pushes out from between two taxis and, with a jerk of his wrist, surges towards the corner. Why have I got these two commas here? Quick point of grammar. So the main line of the sentence here goes, blah, 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 as he pushes out from between two taxis and surges towards the corner. This here, with a jerk of his wrist, is something that I've added in the middle of my sentence. And so we put commas around it. That's also where the pauses will go, as he pushes out from between two taxis and, with a jerk of his wrist, surges towards the corner. So you can work it out grammatically, but you can also hear it when you read aloud, and reading aloud is a really, really important part of the writing that you do. Okay, and a jerk of his wrist surges towards the corner. Okay, let's take a moment to describe him as he heads for the corner. So let's imagine he's slightly behind where he is at the moment that the picture's taken, and my rubber isn't working anymore. No! That's because my screen, it always freezes at some point. It gets overloaded. It'll unfreeze in about 15 seconds. So he's just a little bit further behind where he is. He's heading for the corner. There we are. So what might we describe as he heads for the corner? At the moment, so far we've spoken about him in a fairly general way. Let's home in on some detail. I'm not going to list everything about him. There isn't space and it isn't necessary. But I like his expression. It's kind of interesting. his mouth slightly downturned at the edges, but you can see that his brows are really set. There's real concentration there. It's kind of this. There's a kind of gruffness to it. Maybe let's have him starting to lean into the curve. As he leans into the curve, which gives a sense of his speed, right? Because if you're going slowly, you barely need to lean. As he leans into the curve, his face, so his eyebrows have come down to concentrate. So what do we describe it if things, how do we describe it if things come together, get smaller? How about his face? His face contracts. As he leans into the curve, his face contracts in, I like that word gruff I came up with. It's quite a nice word. Listening to the three Billy Goats gruff or whatever. His face contracts in gruff concentration. Okay, I had a long sentence. Let's keep this one relatively short. So he surges towards the corner as he leans into the curve. So there's a connection there. He's coming for the corner and now he's leaning into the corner. And now his face contracts in gruff concentration. And now he's going to round the corner. And to give a sense of his speed, why don't I describe the rush of air hitting me? And what noise does this scooter make? I reckon this scooter is really quiet because it's electric. So I reckon that the violence of the air that brushes across me is going to contrast with the quietness of his scooter. And yeah, so let's have a go. Let's have a go at that. His face contracts in gruff concentration. It's not going to be a big rush of wind. Actually, he isn't a lorry. A flutter of wind, a flutter of wind passes my cheeks. Maybe not the noise here. Or maybe, yeah. A flutter of wind passes my cheeks. And as the scooter, so how much were you supposed to, well, we don't want the scooter to be disappearing yet. No, I'll save the sound for later. A flutter of wind passes my cheeks. So if the wind is coming from the scooter, that's maybe throwing off his smell. So what does this man smell like? So now I go back to the picture and I try to imagine. So it's a warm day, at least fairly warm, because he's wearing shorts and he's got short sleeves. But he's also wearing a pretty warm sort of gilet thing. And he seems like he might be in a bit of a hurry to get somewhere from the set of his face, from the amount he's leaning into the corner. So maybe he's been rushing a bit. So warm day, warm jacket, in a bit of a rush. I reckon he's a bit sweaty. So I reckon there's a smell of sweat coming off him. As you hold that lovely thought, I'm going to go and let Grigri out. He wants me to open the door for him. So just give me a second. Or about 15 seconds. There we are. Probably was about 15, might even be less than 15 seconds. I'm going to take a little interval here to talk about why I'm doing what I'm doing. Why am I sitting here writing a story in front of you on a Tuesday evening? This is not by any means the only way that you could answer this task. And if you sat in the lesson that I did on this the other day, you would see that many different people came up with many wonderful answers to this question, which were very, very different in the ways that they approached it. There is no right way. There is no one way to write a good answer to something like this. There are infinite different possibilities. I'm not trying to show you what you need to do, what you need to write for your answer to be good. What I am trying to show you is how I think through the task. And the thing to copy from this is not the words that I used or the particular things that I chose to describe. What you should be trying to copy is my thought process. How I'm thinking about it, how I'm deciding what to write, how I'm choosing my words, what I'm using from the picture. Sorry, beg your pardon. How I bring life to this scene. And come up with something that's likely to please a marker, who coincidentally is likely to be somebody a little bit like me. And yeah, that's what you need to try and take from it. A flutter of wind passes my cheeks. Let's get rid of the comma. No, hang on, it passes my cheeks and it leaves behind the smell. That's kind of an interesting idea, I think. Reasonably interesting. A flutter of wind passes my cheeks and leaves. I could say comma leaving. I'm just going for a different structure. Make it a bit more direct. And leaves, would help if I could spell it. It would help if I could handwrite. It would help if I could do if I had any skill relevant to this task, really. And leaves, a heavy odour of sweat. I don't know, and leaves a heavy odour in its wake. And the reason I'm doing it like this is because I'm creating the impression that my narrator character needs a little bit of time to process exactly what this smell is, as you might after the surprise of this person whizzing around the corner from between the honking taxis, and leaves a heavy odour in its wake. You know what the wake is? It's the line of disturbed water behind a boat, but we often use it as a metaphor for something that's left behind as something moves on, and leaves a heavy odour in its wake. And then maybe I'm going to define that word heavy. The heaviness, so this is a deliberate repetition, just like the smell kind of hangs around, so that's why I'm using the repetition here. The heaviness of old sweat and right, I could say and deodorant. Where is he here? He's in a part of London, it's clearly London from the cabs, where there are sort of shops like this and so on. I guess that's most of London. But let's sort of go with that theme. So why don't we say the heaviness of old sweat and pound store deodorant. You know what I mean by a pound store, a place where everything's a pound. And pound store deodorant. Obviously, he hasn't just gone into that particular shop, but I'm evoking something of the atmosphere, something of the kind of culture of that scene that we're writing about. The heaviness of old sweat and pound store deodorant. Now, let's think about length. I'm in an exam. I'm working with limited time. What length do they want? They want roughly 8 to 12 lines. And I think my handwriting, whilst of unusual messiness and general horribleness, is of a fairly normal size. So my next line will take me to 8 lines. So I want to finish somewhere in this kind of... Oh, that would help if I was actually drawing the bit that you can see. I want to finish somewhere in this kind of window here. So at this point, I should be starting to think about how I'm going to wrap this up, which you'll be relieved to hear because you want to get away and do something more fun. The heaviness of old sweat and pound store deodorant. Okay, I'm going to describe him leaving the scene, and then I'm going to finish with life going on as normal without him, which could be the sound of the people back there, or could be something happening over there or something. I'll think about that as I get to it. But I've got a structure in my mind now, so I'm going to say goodbye to him, and then I'm going to finish with something in the scene as life goes on without this figure. I saw some people in the comments earlier going, who is this person? Do I know him? He's just a guy in a photo I found on the internet. So I can tell you no more than that. He's missed the stock photo. The heaviness of old sweat and pound store deodorant. As the scooter disappears, what sounds are there going to be? There's going to be probably the whirring of the motor of this electric scooter. We can see there's a bit of rubbish in the road. Now that's behind him, but it's reasonable therefore to think that there might be something else like that over here. So let's imagine that he goes over a bottle or a carton or something. What noise is it going to make? It's going to make It's going to make a dull popping sound, I think. And then there's going to be the sound of the scooter. He bumps over. No, let's do it differently. Let's say what the scooter does. The scooter jolts up over a milk carton jolts up over a milk carton in the road, and there is a dull pop. What do I mean by dull? So a pop could be pop, or it could be pop. And I'm going for the latter, kind of dull, kind of without the sharp edge of the sound. And there is a dull pop. I'm putting a comma again to separate the sounds so that they aren't part of the same sound. And there is a dull pop, and then the buzzing. And then the buzzing of the motor fades. And then the buzzing of the motor fades, and melts into the drone and clamour of the traffic. And there's something I'm doing in this sentence that would normally be wrong, which I'll talk about in a second. And melts into the drone clamour of the traffic. So look at this sentence. The scooter jolts up over a milk carton in the road, and there is a dull pop, and then the buzzing of the motor fades and melts into the drone and clamour of the traffic. It's a long sentence. And also, how many ands are there in this sentence? 1, 2, 3, 4. And you will undoubtedly have been told, quite correctly, by your teachers, and indeed by people like me, and maybe even by me myself, that you shouldn't string sentences together with loads of ands. But as with any rule, at least in writing, there are exceptions. And rules are there to be broken when you want to create certain effects, even things like spelling rules. In this case, I want to create a sense of everything happening in a hurry. The kind of chaos of the London streets, and the way that this person flying through on his scooter and ignoring road safety and everything, and just riding over things and breaking them, is a bit of a chaotic element. And so everything happens quickly, and it all strings together. And there's this sound, and there's that sound, and then the sound fades and it disappears. And at the end of it, there's a sense of, phew, I'm glad that sentence is over. A bit like many of the drivers around here in those taxis will be glad that this chaotic individual has disappeared. Let's read what we got so far. There is a violent honking as he pushes out from between two taxis and, with a jerk of his wrist, surges towards the corner. As he leans into the curve, his face contracts in gruff concentration. A flutter of wind passes my cheeks and leaves a heavy odour in its wake. The heaviness of old sweat and pound store deodorant. The scooter jolts up over a milk carton in the road, and there is a dull pop, and then the buzzing of the motor fades and melts into the drone and clamour of the traffic. So we've got a kind of arc here. As he arrives, he leaves into the corners, the wind and the sound, and then there's a more violent sound, and then it fades as he disappears off. Now you have to be flexible as you write something like this. I was going to end with a reference to something else in the scene, but I'm in an exam, and when I've done enough, and I'm happy with what I've written, and it has a natural arc to it, I don't need to add more. So I had planned to mention something else. I would also plan to write a full stop there and not a weird slash. That's a bit hypocritical, bear in mind the comments I make on other people's work. But actually, I think this works perfectly well as an ending. And so I'm getting rid of that idea. And that's something you need to be prepared to do. Yes, plan what you're going to do a couple of steps ahead at least, but also be prepared to ditch your plan. It connects together quite well. There's an arc through it. We've got a mix of different senses. We've got action, but all the action happens within this world, the world of this scene. And even when I've imagined something new that isn't there, it is derived in some way from the picture. So for instance, I imagine him going over some milk carton here. Here's a beautifully drawn milk carton, M for milk. But that is based on this thing back here. So I'm still working with elements that are in the picture. Yes, of course, the smells aren't in the picture, but the smells are, I think, reasonably likely based upon how he's dressed, how he's moving, and the kind of world he's in, with some sort of cheap shops in the background and that kind of thing. So everything comes from the picture, even when it isn't in the picture. And everything that happens in the world of that picture. Things you mustn't do with something like this is really important. Include telling me about his life. Don't tell me that he is on the way to a really important date with a lovely lady who he met last week on an app. Because we don't want to know that. We don't want to know that he just had a bad job interview and he's in a mood because he's going away from it. You're writing about this image. You're an observer of this person. Don't be him. Don't say, I was doing this. Don't tell me things about his life that you can't work out, that someone couldn't work out from the picture. Describe the scene. Think about the perspective. For this, I think the best perspective is somebody on the pavement on the other side of the road looking at it from this angle and experience him going past. There will be other options, but you don't want to bring in an option that makes your position complicated. You don't want to be a cyclist going past trying to navigate around him, because then you're going to have to describe a lot of what you're doing, and that's going to take away space from describing the person in the scene. So a tip when you're writing any descriptive piece, make your narrator's perspective simple, so that you don't get distracted by trying to make sense of how your narrator is observing this and what their experiences are. Make the narrator simple, make their perspective very simple, like a person standing on the pavement watching, so that you can focus everything on the scene, and in this case, on the person in the scene. Okay, I'm just going to leave that on the screen for a second, so that if you want, you can pause and look at it, and look at these strange squiggles and scribbles that claim to be words. And I think that is enough on all that. Naturally, my tip of the week for this lesson, this YouTube channel being an entirely self-serving enterprise, is that you should go to the RSL Educational website, because somebody is offering the most wonderful online classes nowadays, and if you don't know how wonderful they are, you should go there and find out. Look, this is obviously an advert. I'm not pretending otherwise. I shouldn't say the word advert. It means YouTube will flag this as containing ads. This does not contain ads. Anyway, what was I saying? The way I've done my classes is that you don't need to buy packages of them in advance. There's no commitment or anything. You just sign up for as many or as few classes as you want to, and you pay for each one. So if you want to find out whether my classes are useful, then go and sign up for one. I'm running classes this week and next week. Then I'm on a break for probably a couple of weeks, for reasons that you may be able to work out from the information on the website. And then I'll be back sometime sort of early to mid-November to carry on with the lessons. But if you want to have a trial lesson out before it gets to the middle of November, then sign up for the lessons this week or next week. Some of them are sold out, but many of them aren't. Right, that was supposed to be my tip of the week. In fact, it was a little bit of sly publicity, but well, it's my channel. I can do what I want. Okay, let's take a few questions. I've kept this very short, which is great for all concerned. Yeah, after I've taken a few of your questions, if you have any, we can wrap up. You can go your merry way and do something much more fun than watching me write nonsense that you can't read anyway. Minjun Kim says, I like your shirt, Robert. Thank you very much. It's just a t-shirt that I grabbed randomly from my drawer early this morning, but I'm delighted that you like it. Cooking with Oli says, are the online classes free? I can't do my whole life for free, or I wouldn't be able to pay my rent. This is free, but my online group classes, which are proper classes where everyone interacts the whole time and you're talking about each other's work and everything, are not free. But I think they're very reasonably priced. Of course, I would say that. Try one, find out whether they're good value. And if they aren't good value, you've only lost the cost of one lesson. Janina would like to try a lesson. That's wonderful. Go and do it. pop onto the website immediately after this, or even before the end of this, and sign up for one. How long was this? It's been half an hour so far. Robert, are there any tips for staying calm? That's a good question. One of the best tips for staying calm is not to worry about whether you're calm. One of the things that gets people most stressed in stressful situations like exams is thinking, I'm stressed, I shouldn't be stressed, everybody else is calm, being stressed is going to make me mess up. One of the best things you can do for yourself is to realize that it's completely normal to feel stressed at an exam, and just accept that. Accept that you're stressed. Everybody else in that room with you is also stressed, and therefore it isn't something you need to worry about. Just accept that you're feeling stressed and get on with it anyway. That's often a pretty good rule for a lot of things in life. Accept the way that you feel. Don't feel bad about the way you feel, and then get on with what you needed to do anyway. And there's an awful lot of stuff that you can deal with like that. But I think the most important 11 plus specific reason not to feel stressed is, and I know I say this all the time, but that's because it's really important, and I'm talking to people all the time who just haven't got this message, is that the 11 plus doesn't really matter that much. The exam doesn't matter that much. What matters a lot more than the exam is the preparation that you do for the exam. If you've been watching videos like this, if you've been doing lots of practice, if you've been thinking about how to revise, about how to develop your study skills, if you've been rounding off your maths and English skills for primary school or prep school or whatever you're doing, then even if you don't get into any of the schools you want to get into, you will still do really well at whichever school you go to, even if it's, the local school that you never really thought about before. You'll be absolutely fine. You're somebody who's going to do well and be academically successful. The most useful thing that you can do to be calm on your exam is to realize that you've already done the bit that matters, which is all the preparation. And then wherever you end up at school, it's going to be fine. And as soon as you realize that you're going to be fine whatever happens, and it just doesn't actually matter all that much, then you've kind of found the key to being calm and just going through it and doing your best and not stressing about it. That's one of the most useful things that you can do. VK Gaming Boy says Dimitri must be seen before the live stream ends. Unfortunately, Dimitri is not in this room, and I can't really go running downstairs and find him because then you'd all log off. So I apologise. I agree that he must be seen. So my nose is really itchy. It's whenever I have a cat in my lesson, I get an itchy nose, and also there's a lot of my nose to feel itchy. Right. Tony is going to go now. Wish me luck in my results. Tony, the very best of luck in your results. How do I improve my speed for questions I have lots of working out or writing, asks Rizvani. That's a really good question. The answer is not to practice writing faster and faster. The answer is that you need to have really good technique, which means really good systems. We've just been looking at this writing task. Did you notice how at the beginning I immediately went round the picture and I said, what do I see? I see taxis. I see this man on the scooter. What do I see? He's leaning. That means he's going fast. What's his direction of travel? It's like that. What other things do I see? I notice the people in the background. I notice the shop. I notice the litter. So I've immediately done a survey of the picture and thought about details I might want to mention. I might not mention all of them, but I'm giving myself an overview. And then I'm thinking, what's the main arc of my story? This man is clearly moving from here to there. So the arc of my piece, my description, which I can think of as a very, very simple little story that just happens within this frame, is going to be him moving from there to there. Okay, I've got that. Now, where do I start? Therefore, based on this arrow, I'm going to start in there, coming out from between the taxis. If he comes out from between taxis, what are they going to do? They're going to honk. So I'm going to start with the taxis honking as he comes out between them. I basically planned my story there, pretty much. And that wasn't because I was thinking, how can I rush and do this really quickly? It's because I had a system. I had a system of identifying details in the scene, identifying the main arc of the main character, where I'm going to start, what's going to happen as he starts. Do you see what I mean? I had a system for dealing with that question, so that if you gave me any picture to describe, I'd have immediately gone in and done those things, and I'd have, really, really quickly had a clear idea of how I was going to go about dealing with that question. So that's what I mean about having systems. When you're doing maths, it's about identifying the key information in the question, identifying what's likely to be the main skill that the question is testing, and identifying a good thing to start with, which doesn't mean working out the whole process of my answer, and then working out that I'm going to start by putting down some of the things I know and starting to combine them. These are all systems that you develop. The key to writing quickly in an exam is doing really good practice on these systems, so that when you're given any question, You can immediately work systematically in steps. Wasting time in an exam generally comes from staring at questions, or it comes from kind of thrashing about randomly because you don't have clear systems that tell you to do this, then this, then this, then this. And so systematic working where you have a method is how you save time in an exam. The other thing that makes a really big difference is when you're practicing, look for the points that slow you down. Are they particular skills? Are they particular kinds of question? Is there a particular situation in which you tend to find yourself staring at the page going, identify what those things are as early as you can in your practice and then practice those particular things. Always look out for the things that slow you down and practice those things. And that way you will improve your speed. Taking those ideas together, if you work on those things really well, you're very unlikely to have timing problems by the time you get into an exam. Fantastic question. I'm going to wrap up in a second. I'm building towards that. I'm very happy with a short lesson in the middle of all this teaching, as I'm sure you are. A huge happy birthday to Belle Wu, whose birthday it is. Maybe Belle is the name of this person's mother, perhaps. Maybe it's theirs. But happy birthday, whoever you may be. How do you improve in creative marketing? Creative marketing, I don't know, start a YouTube channel and try to sell people things and see how well it goes. I don't know, you mean writing, I think, creative writing. Creative and descriptive writing, I reckon. I've got loads of videos about that on this channel. You've been watching one right now. But if you go onto my channel page, you can see there's a section of playlists, and there's a playlist for all my writing videos. So go to that playlist and there's loads of stuff. How can you best use them? There's a worksheet always linked in the video description. There's one linked under here for this lesson. Do the worksheet before you watch the lesson. And then compare what I do in the lesson to what you did in the worksheet. And then if you really want to learn maximally with Lomax. If you really want to learn if you want to learn to the max with the Lomax, then have another go at the worksheet after you've watched the lesson. And that way the lesson, the things that I've said, for better or for worse, will really sink in. All right, people, I'm going to wrap up there. I know there were loads of other questions. Thank you for asking so many questions, but my brain is fried, and it's an old brain and an old body, so I shouldn't overload it. Yeah, fantastic to have you here. Thank you for your wonderful questions. Thank you for being so engaged, and I hope this was useful, and I will see you next week for the next Easy 11 Plus live lesson at the new time again of 6:30. This is going to be my regular time from now on, I think. 6:30 on a Tuesday rather than 6 o'clock. So all my old advertising is redundant. It's 6:30, not 6. All right, brilliant people. Go to the OSL Educational website. Try one of my lessons. I would love you to try one of my lessons. I'll tell you one reason why I love it when people from my channel try my lessons. Apart from the fact that I want to get filthy rich. No, not that. I'm not going to get filthy rich from these lessons. One reason I love it is that I get to put faces to these names who turn up in the live chat, and people who comment underneath, and people who send me emails afterwards. I get so many emails. It's really, really nice to actually meet people and be able to talk to them and learn what they're like, and that's in many ways the most fun part of it for me. So come and join a lesson and make me happy for all manner of reasons, and maybe you'll enjoy it too. Bye-bye, everybody. Have a wonderful week, and if I don't see you in a lesson in the meantime, I'll see you next Tuesday evening at 6:30.